How frequently are you driving down the road and you see someone do something completely unacceptable? Or maybe you're on your phone watching Instagram Reels and you think to yourself, that person should not have a license. Well, we as people have become too complacent with our driving laws, and because of that, we need to overhaul our licensing system. I believe that we need every driver to undergo a series of trials, testing their senses such as sight and sound, or hearing, their reaction time, and most definitely, their overall driving abilities. In this speech, I'll be discussing the importance of testing elderly drivers as well as the youth drivers, the young adult range. The elderly drivers would be because of sensory deprivation, and the younger drivers would be because of the hazards that they provide on the road. My goal is also to inform you about what the current Floridian laws are and how we should change them. So, why are these tests necessary for younger drivers? Well, the roads are notoriously unsafe, and we should be trying whatever we can to make them safer. Drivers ages 20 to 29 made up 18% of the licensed drivers in California in 2019, and they were responsible for over 25% of fatal crashes, as well as injury crashes. That is the age group closest to when the first renewal of your license takes place. If you were to receive your license at 16 years old and then have your renewal 8 years later, that would put you at 24 years old, smack dab in the middle of that range. Now, the statistic involving crashes probably isn't surprising for any of you. Every single one of us, being in this age group or maybe directly below it, has heard every stat imaginable about how likely we are to be in a dangerous accident. We know that driving is dangerous, especially for our age group, but for entirely different reasons than elderly drivers. Young adults still have outstanding senses and reaction time and nothing wrong with their bodies, and they even have clear minds. Well, unless they're driving under the influence. However, they also get into very bad habits that could potentially be corrected in driving tests. Now, why are these tests necessary for older drivers? This one is slightly easier to understand, but maybe more difficult to argue. Because if you look at the numbers, like author Cadaret Waverly Verena did, then you would see that seniors are more likely to get into an auto accident than those in the 40 to 65 age group, but are still less likely to get in an accident than those in the under 40 age group, end quote. Elderly drivers are generally more conservative drivers. They tend to drive slower and take fewer risks. Whereas a younger driver might be in a situation and think, oh, I can pass that. An elderly driver may decide to stay back and just let it happen. This can be attributed to a couple of factors. One may be that older drivers are not often heading anywhere with a significant time crunch, and another may be that they deem it not worth the risk because of all the things they've seen and felt in their life. This is one thing we know. There is one thing we know that it isn't, though. It is not self-recognition of deteriorating senses or capabilities. In an academic textbook crafted by scientists Carol Holland and Patrick Rabbit, it states, quote, despite marked declines in their objective sensory efficiency, people in their 70s did not rate their sensory abilities as poor any more than did people in their 50s, end quote. But those who did perceive declines in their sensory abilities reported that they made real adjustments to how they operated their vehicle. The text also states that, quote, those individuals who reported taking such precautions also reported fewer accidents, end quote. This is a monumental reason as to why we need to administer tests for elderly people. Many do not want to actually come to terms with the fact that they're losing their bodily abilities. However, when they do, they are able to become safer and more effective drivers. So what needs to change? Florida law states that a Class E driver's license must be renewed every 8 years for customers 79 or younger, and after 80, it must be renewed every 6 years. Then, once you reach 80, you must pass a vision test to renew your license. 80 years old is the first time you have to do anything in Florida to show that you should still be operating a vehicle. According to the American Optometric Association, the average adult's vision begins to worsen in their 40s. That is nearly half a century between when eyesight starts to decline and when you have your first eye test in the DMV. I propose that we change the time renewals from 8 to 10 years and then add a driver's test for every renewal of all ages, while having reaction time and sensory tests for every renewal after the age of 50. The delay in time for the renewals, going from 8 to 10 years, is to help minimize the increase in government spending that would be necessary to create this change. Additionally, we need not waste time or money on administering reaction time or sensory tests to those in the younger demographic, the bodies that have not experienced any sort of deterioration process yet. Instead, we must focus on using our government resources effectively to help minimize the number of people unfit to be using our roads. Overall, our licensing system has some obvious flaws, but nothing that a little reform can't fix. By administering the appropriate testing procedures for those who wish to renew their licenses, we can effectively decrease the total number of drivers who should not be operating a vehicle with as much dangerous potential as a car or a motorcycle does. Now you know the importance of testing elderly drivers to make sure their senses are sharp and their minds, as well as making sure that our younger drivers haven't developed any unsafe habits on the road. In conclusion, our current laws do not do a good enough job of protecting good drivers from the bad ones. It is imperative that we reward our safe drivers with real safety that they can see and feel. That way they have an incentive to continue driving in a caring or patient manner. The road is one of the most dangerous places on earth, and it is something that we all visit every single day. Therefore, it is our responsibility to do everything we can to be sure that we are keeping our roadways as safe as possible.